What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm your host Daniel, alongside with me Shannon White, as always. Shannon, how are you doing? And happy late Father's Day.
Well, like I wished you earlier today, a happy belated Father's Day to you as well. Had a
Yes, sir.
great time, great weekend, and just blessed, and hopefully all the other fathers here in our community had a great one as well.
Yeah. Did you do anything special for the holiday?
Well, we went out to a new barbecue place my son found, and it was
Uh-huh.
really good. And we looked around and traveled some new places there on Saturday, and then yesterday I had my father-in-law here and family, and I grilled out steaks, and so we just had a great weekend.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, we kind of did the same. I mean, we had a little get together. We had some a family get together, but that was on Saturday, and then
Hmm.
yesterday for Sunday we did. Had a service church, and then I ended up having to take my daughter to her mom, my older daughter to her mom. So I spent majority of that day traveling, but it's good to be back home.
Yes,
Got
I'm glad to
to
have you back this week.
yes, sir, yes, sir. I had an emergency dog surgery thing that went happen. My dog's good; he's in good hands. It's just that was the only time that they could put him in, but he's doing well. He's 100% on his road for recovery.
We love our
But on
doggies.
what's that?
We love our doggies.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. Especially the wifey. She's, you know, we have like five of them, so it can get a little hectic.
Oh
But
yeah.
we got some breaking news today. We got a lot of Steelers news, and first and foremost, let's talk about the one that is rumored, hasn't happened yet. Anthony Miller, the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, the first free agent signed this offseason by the Pittsburgh Steelers. It appears that he may be on his way out the door. In a text thanking Pittsburgh, or in a tweet, I'm sorry, thanking Pittsburgh. Uh, Nothing official yet, but do you see this as a as what's going on here? He's on his way out the door.
Well, reading the tea leaves, they had one position open, and they
Hmm.
signed two guys, which we'll get to
Right.
today. So we knew they had to make another corresponding move, and then that tweet comes out. So it doesn't really surprise me or shock me because, as I've been saying, on our show all off season, even back in when OTAs first kicked off the first week, he was dealing with a hamstring injury.
Right.
Some guys, he is just absolutely jacked. He's ripped up, shredded. It looks like Spider Man,
Hmm.
but he can't stay healthy. And availability is the best ability, and you're going nowhere without it. And he gets hurt just so frequently, and it's a shame because when he has had a little bit of a healthy stretch in Chicago, he was
Hmm.
productive. But
Right.
I kind of seen the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, especially once we saw that, like you mentioned right there, that the Pittsburgh Steelers ended up signing or looking to sign. I'm not sure if it's official on the second one, to be signing two players that was going to put them over the 90-man limit. I was a little bit surprised at it being Miller, given the fact, like we stated before, the Steelers were very, enthused. They were excited about this player. They brought him in last year. He got hurt. They signed him very quickly in free agency to this
Mhm.
year. And unfortunately, he gets off. He's not going to make it on the field. But the other thing that possibly could tell me is that maybe the receivers or the receiving room is doing very well. That they don't need an Anthony Miller in there. That they got some depth there. And I think that it's a solid room. I think that there isn't a clear cut, wide receiver one. I think, Deontay Johnson's probably closest to that right now in that room. But I don't think losing an Anthony Miller changes any of that dynamic or any of those things. Um, but as you mentioned, the Pittsburgh Steelers signed two players. The first one, they signed a long snapper, Rex Sunahara. To me, that just kind of tells me that they may not be pleased with Kuntz as a long snapper. What do you think about that?
Well, there was talk early in camp, early in OTAs, that they
Right.
were wanting to bring in competition
Hmm.
for maybe all their special team specialists. But I heard Christian Kuntz mentioned specifically.
Right.
So that did not surprise me. Rex Sunahara has been with the Steelers before on the practice squad. So they obviously kind of know what to expect with him. and they must have thought enough of him to bring him back to be some camp competition. Because that's anytime you're going to play the style of offense the Steelers are looking to play, you've got to have a clean unit. It's got to be a clean snap, clean hold, clean kick. And last year they struggled with that. They missed more field goals, I think, than anybody in the league. And sometimes it was bad snap. Sometimes Boswell just missed it. So,
Right.
and then they're also looking to improve the punting because they brought Harvin in some competition and man. So I think that, they realize that field position and capitalizing on every scoring opportunity is going to be very crucial the way this offense is set up this year.
No, 100%. I agree. And you brought up Kuntz and that there was some conversation. I think that conversation was the snaps were a little bit off. They weren't perfect. Mm-hmm. And, when you look at the process of the kicking game, like you mentioned, the snap being the first part of that process has to be perfect or at least close to, because if not, it'll create a domino effect. And like you mentioned, the Steelers did miss a lot more field goals. There were a few botched punts. They did bring in competition across the board. I think that this one's probably going to be the closest competition, or potentially could see somebody change. I do think Presley Harvin ends up beating out Man, and I think Boss takes it as well. But this one is going to be interesting. The next position that the Pittsburgh Steelers addressed or are addressing is the inside linebacker position. It appears that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be signing Nick Kwiatkowski, inside linebacker. Apparently, you've had he's played in the league with a couple of different teams, but you have a pretty good insight about this player. Tell us about him.
Well, Nick Kwiatkowski was with the West Virginia Mountaineers for 4 years. So for 4 years, I butchered his name. I really did. I butchered it. I said it all different kind of ways. So finally, when he was getting ready to go to the NFL, I looked it up, made sure I was pronouncing it correctly. But Kwiatkowski's been with 3 teams. He was drafted in the 4th round in 2016 by the Bears. Played 4 years with the Bears. Then got a really good contract to go to the Raiders. And he started all 16 games 1 year for the Raiders. And then, he had his best season. Then the next year, he dealt with a little bit of injuries and started about half the games. Then he signed last year with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, he is not a great athlete. He is a very he's a hard worker. He's a high character guy. I think he will fit in great as that 3rd or 4th linebacker on the depth chart. What's so funny is the Steelers lost Robert Spillane in free agency. And the guy they're bringing in, Nick Kwiatkowski, is very similar. He has similar limitations. He's a little bit more instinctual in coverage than Spillane was. And he's not quite as physical against the run as Spillane. So maybe his skill set is actually a slightly better fit for the Steelers and what they're needing than what Spillane would have been. Because we know that Landon Roberts and Mark Robertson can kind of already give the Steelers that physicality that Spillane brought. So Kwiatkowski is a little bit of both. He's kind of in the middle. To me, he plays a little bit like Joe Sherbert. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people need to expect. But he's also, just like Tanner Muse, he's a great special teams guy. Right. And that was his main role for the Falcons last year. So I think the Steelers have really done a great job of replacing Spillane on the depth chart and Marcus Allen on special teams.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And like you mentioned, special teams is a huge, contributor for this team. I know that the NFL and the league seem to try to be doing away with it or doing their best to do away with it. But it's still a facet of the game, and it's still currently, going on, and it is an important factor for this game. And so, getting him in there, I find that to be incredibly useful. But it's a little bit, I don't know, I'm a little bit unimpressed, I guess. I think, when you look at the inside linebacker position, in my opinion, it's a bunch of stopgap type of guys. There isn't any true answer there. These are some fill-in space, some bridge sort of players, so to speak. I don't see anybody out there that and I understand Shazier was a generational talent. He was on his way. The trajectory that he was going was heading in that direction of probably being in the Hall of Fame one day, if it weren't have been for his injury. And I understand that you're not going to find one of those guys, but we haven't even came close. And the Steelers, this position is, in my opinion, a little bit just kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Anticlimactic.
There it is. That's the correct word. Basically, everything I was trying to say was that anticlimactic. It just kind of feels like, maybe perhaps a Quan Alexander there, I think would have felt a little bit better. But it is what it is. I think at this point in free agency and in the offseason, I guess the Steelers kind of have to wait until anybody unexpected gets cut. But do you think the Steelers are done making moves in the inside linebacker position?
I think they are for right now. I think it'll depend on as you start getting to the release dates and cut down days. If somebody hits, which they've done that in the past, and it's hard to get a guy in and get them up to speed to where they can really contribute. But I can still see because Colin, and he's always going to have his eyes open and do his due diligence and turn over every stone. He's going to find. If there's a guy that can help the Steelers, he'll, even during this 5 weeks of inactivity till camp opens, they're still going to be doing their work. They're not really going to be going on vacation. That's just not how the players are, but not the front office. So I think that the Steelers hit rock bottom last year, the last couple of years at the inside linebacker position. It was the worst I can remember in my lifetime. And I think they said, okay, we're not one to overspend on any one position. And the guys that they could bring in that would have been a huge, massive upgrade, most of them had a huge price tag. And the Steelers we got so many positions, so we're going to spread that out. And I think they did a brilliant job. They bring in Cole Holcomb, who has a real opportunity to thrive in Pittsburgh's defense as that Mac linebacker. So I think he's going to be a massive upgrade if healthy, which, that's with anybody. Landon Roberts is going to bring a physicality that the Steelers did not have last year. And he's a high effort guy. Usually in coverage when he struggles is because he overruns it or, he was too amped up and missed the tackle. But it's not a watch and being leery of contact like what they dealt with last year with Bush. And he's going to be a great example and a mentor to Mark Robertson. So now you bring in Kwiatkowski, and he's going to be able to be that quality guy, fill in a few snaps a game, and be a strong special teams guy. And he's also a leader. All these guys have leadership ability. So I think they've upgraded. They don't have a stud yet. They don't, maybe Holcomb can become that. Maybe Robertson. I'm not putting any limitations on what he'll become down the road. But for this season, right now, it's an unknown.
Yeah.
But I would like to see, and it wouldn't shock me. Let's say a guy like Chad Muma becomes available in Jacksonville as a trade possibility. A guy that I really thought would be a great fit with the Steelers last year, but Jacksonville drafted him. There is ways to get guys that, can be that next star inside linebacker. It doesn't have to be another Ryan Shazier because Ryan Shazier was a unicorn. Guys don't run like that at inside linebacker. He's the fastest inside linebacker ever, as far as I know, his 40 time at the combine. So, you can't find that, but you can find other guys, as you say, who are generational.
Right.
And like Shazier looked like he was going to become. So I'm excited about the inside linebacker position. I think it has the biggest opportunity for variance. It's either going to be really, really good or it could be not what they're expecting. It'd still be an issue this season. But we're hoping it's at least somewhere in the middle.
Right, exactly. I still see the middle linebacker or the inside middle linebacker position as the weakest amongst the defense. I think that the front, the defensive line, the outside linebackers are probably the strength, followed by the defensive backs. I think that although they've lost a lot of positions there and there's a lot of new players there, they've been able to replace, like a Cam Sutton with a Patrick Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
draft a Joey Porter Jr. and a Corey Trice to at this point appear to be as advertised, so to speak. I mean, we'll see what happens when they put on the pads. But for the most part, I think that they're going to end up, those positions were addressed with high draft picks in Joey Porter. And, you have somebody as a mentor like Patrick Peterson, as I mentioned. The inside linebacker position was overhauled, and I still feel it's a little bit, like you mentioned, anticlimactic. I think it's probably the weakest position on the defense, but I think that it's probably going to be the most improved. I mean, you can't get worse than last year, right? So it's got to be going up in the right direction. I think the healthy front defensive line is really going to be, their best friend, though. And, clearing up things up in the front, having a Larry Ogunjobi up there, a Keanu Benton, if he's as advertised as well, Cam Hayward, those guys are going to keep those, inside linebackers clean and make their jobs a little bit easier. I'm excited to see what they're able to do. But, like I mentioned, maybe something else happens. Maybe they're looking at that position for the future. Maybe that's something they addressed in the draft later on and just need something to fill in the space, so to speak. But as far as, today's topic, we're going to be discussing what makes a successful season for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2023. Last season, they went 9-8, missed the playoffs by a game or so. They had one game and they would have been in. Had the Jets done what they were supposed to have done, the Steelers would have been in as well. Now, for you, Shannon, do the Steelers have to get number 7, hoist the Lombardi for it to be a successful season in 2023? Or what are some of the realistic expectations to have?
Yeah, there was a couple of seasons with the Killer Bees that I would have said that winning the Lombardi Trophy and bringing number 7 home would have been, the only way to have a truly successful season. But,
right.
When you have a franchise quarterback, all-world running back, and, the best wide receiver in the game at that time, that offense was loaded. They had a great line, too. But they just could never get the couple of defensive pieces they needed to put them over the top. And it seemed like whether it was the catch, it wasn't a catch, whether it was a Burfett tackle on Bell a couple of years to put him out for the playoffs. There was always an injury here or there. They never had a full allotment of players in these playoff games that they lost. So now, without the franchise quarterback, you cannot say, well, they have to win a Lombardi to have a successful season. This is about the next step in the process. They actually accelerated their rebuilding process after being left by having a couple of really strong free agents, classes and draft classes. And they're still adding, and they're still, like we said, they totally revamped the inside linebacker position. And I think on defense, my thing is the inside linebackers are maybe the biggest question mark, but I think they can potentially be one of the better units. Much improved from last year. The only thing I would say is strong safety is my concern on the defensive side of the ball. Is it truly been upgraded, or are they just treading water for a season?
Right.
Because we'll see how it works and how it looks, because there's going to be a lot of defensive changes. This season is all about Kenny Pickett taking the next step in his development. Now, we know he's clutch, and that is not going anywhere. We know he's got great leadership. We hear about him going out and to the weekly dinners with the offensive linemen. And, he's a lot like being that way. He wants them to understand how much he respects them, and he realizes how important they are to anything he's going to accomplish. And the hard work ethic and the film studying, he's all those things. Things that Ben was not as a young man at all. So Kenny Pickett is he can take that next step. And even if they don't make a deep playoff run, if we see that progress in his confidence that he can put points on the scoreboard, be more aggressive in the red zone area, but also protect the ball. Have good ball security. It's a tightrope. It's kind of you might throw an interception or turn the ball over, and it depending on the situation in the game, it might have been worth the effort, the try. But you got to be smart with the football. And last year he was a little reckless, and then he became overly cautious. This year he needs to find a peaceful medium, and he's going to be in an offense that he's not set up for big numbers. He's not going to put up 5,000 yards, and they're going to want to run this football. They're going to want to possess the football. They're going to want to wear teams down. And then he's just got to make those big passes when the opportunity presents itself. So, the play action, when you work a guy open, you got to hit that pass. When you get to the red zone, you got to put it in there, whatever. And I think he's capable of that. So that is what I'm looking for to qualify as a successful season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, the Steelers have to, for me to, qualify them as a successful season, is seeing them move in the right step in the right direction, seeing progress in some of those key positions. This offensive line is still relatively new to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, we want to see that chemistry build and then become, not just cohesive, but also become one of the stronger units, not just on the team, but in the league. And, I think that they have the players and the right coach in Pat Meyer to accomplish those type of things. And they got a great running back tandem in Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, that if they continue doing what they did last season and continue the trajectory and stay healthy, which I think is probably going to be the key or the biggest piece of that, or biggest component in that equation, I think that's going to help them continue, and that's going to work better for a second-year Kenny Pickett. And as you mentioned, I mean, it's going to be huge for him to take that next step forward. There's not really like an excuse, not just on his aspect, but also on the offense with Matt Canada or anybody. This is a full off season with Kenny Pickett under helm, and a full off season where you have your offensive coordinator picking the brain of the quarterback to figure out, likes, dislikes, comforts, discomforts, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And, in my opinion, it should be a step forward. Now, is it going to be a step to where I think they're going to hoist that Lombardi at the end of the season? I would hope so, but I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. Not yet. I'd like to see some things first. I want to see it plan out. I want to see it, there's a term called paper champs for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Are you talking about the Cleveland Browns?
I mean, you can put a team together and everything else. They still got to put it together. And so, we want to see it happen. But I think that there's no excuse for this team. And I think that they have to win for this to be a successful season, in my opinion, at least 10 games, get back into double digit, and at least win one playoff game, whether it's a, wild card game. I hope they end up winning the division, but that's going to be a tough task against the Cincinnati Bengals team. Right now, they've done it 2 years in a row. They've made it to either the Super Bowl or the championship in the last couple of years. And so, the Steelers got to knock them off. And until they go in there and prove that they can do so, convincingly, then we got to give them their respect. And so, with that being said, I think that if the Steelers can win a playoff game and get out of that slump, I think the last time they won a playoff game was in the 2017 divisional game against the Chiefs. So that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And so, this is, it's gotten to the point where people have started to make, a joke about the standard being, good during the year and not being able to do anything in the playoffs. And that needs to change. And I could see this year being, a year that does. And I'm looking forward to it. So, but we're going to take a quick break. When we get back on the other side, we're going to talk about takeaways and players that are going to be important to the Pittsburgh Steelers so that they end up achieving that goal, achieving at least a playoff victory and making the playoffs. On the YouTube side, stay right there. On the audio side, just a few words from our sponsors. And welcome back to the Hangover, y'all. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon. This is the Hangover on Steel Curtain Network. If you guys, I know you guys are watching this on YouTube, but if you want to, catch up on all of our coverage from Steel Curtain Network, check us out on the podcast side. There is multiple podcasts that come out daily. I have an audio only podcast that airs out on Saturday. Go check that out. If you hadn't checked it out already, you get Jeff Hartman, you get Brian Anthony Davis, you get Dave Schofield, so many other guys that you already are familiar seeing. You can hear more of their content on the audio side. So make sure you go check them out. And there's also articles that are being written at behindthesteelcurtain.com. Shannon, have you put anything out here recently or have anything coming out for the website?
Well, my last one was Friday, but I am working on an article about why can't the Steelers contend this season, and talk about, a lot of teams that have made it to the Super Bowl in recent seasons have kind of, surprised people, maybe come out of nowhere. Some teams were built specifically to compete that season. We think of Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You think of the Los Angeles Rams. Those teams were built to compete. And, it was unique circumstances. But you take the Cincinnati Bengals, in Burrow's second season, nobody was expecting that. So teams, it's the way the league's set up now for parity. If you hit, like even the Philadelphia Eagles last year, they built a great roster, but we know Hurts was the question. He had not established himself. Well, he definitely did last year, was in the MVP running and got him to the Super Bowl. So those things happen. You have to build the roster, and then you got to get the quarterback play. And I think the Steelers are close to having that complete roster, and now it's up to Kenny Pickett. But that's my next article, sir.
100%. I look forward to reading it, and you guys can go check that out at behindthesteelcurtain.com. Yes, that website does still exist. So, Pittsburgh Steelers, in order for it to be a successful season in our eyes, we're looking at, playoff bound, playoff win at the very minimum. What are some things that need to happen throughout the season for that to be possible? 3 takeaways, so to speak, for you, Shannon, that have to occur for that to be a true statement.
Well, this goes in line with what I was talking about before the show, is I wanted to put this out there for you as well. And I want to see what our answers is and what the community thinks. To me, there is 3 things, like who's the 3 key components to the Steelers having a successful season? And first and foremost is TJ Watt. We have seen that without Watt, even the other superstars are not as effective. They do not play on the same level because teams can focus more on them, and it hinders their production. So TJ Watt, if you're just saying who is the most valuable player in the NFL each year, in my opinion, you have to say TJ Watt, because a lot of these other teams, even without their superstar quarterback, can still win games, as we've seen the 49ers do, and the Eagles are set up to do. But the Steelers, for whatever reason, with TJ Watt's out, they're non-competitive.
Right.
The next guy, and number 2, is Kenny Pickett. Because to me, Kenny Pickett is that unanswered question. When you have a strong roster, or you're getting there, do you have the quarterback to lead that roster and make those clutch plays, the winning plays? Because as we know, that's what matters. It's not the statistics. A lot of bad quarterbacks put up big statistics. Kirk Cousins comes to mind. But winning is what matters. And everybody says, well, that shouldn't be a statistic that counts against a quarterback. Well, I'm sorry, it does. Because if you look at the greats, the only great that people are going to sit back and say, well, he was a great quarterback, and that's Dan Marino. Most guys that were considered great quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, was able to get their team to at least the Super Bowl and win one at some point. So Kenny Pickett is that second guy. Then the third guy for importance on this team, it's like, who is that guy? I mean, there's always these three guys, and you can't really say a coach. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, so the third guy to me is Isaac Samali.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it's Samalu is because the weakness the Steelers have had now for about 4 or 5 years has been the offensive line. And we started to see improvement last year. Well, what was the weak spot? Left side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was it more Dan Moore or was it more Kevin Dotson? Was it a combination of both? But if you go back and you watch, there was so many times that Dotson blew his assignment. So many times that he did not work in conjunction well with Moore or with Cole. And, so here was Moore trying to take care of the outside rush, and he would get beat back to the inside because he's thinking he's going to have some help. And Moore, and Dotson's not even paying attention. And he's over here doing a double team with Cole when it wasn't even necessary. And they Pickett about got killed a couple of times.
Yeah.
He got injured. So I think Samalu is going to elevate that whole group. He's the oldest. He's the veteran. He's the most accomplished. He is fundamentally sound, which is going to help Cole, and it's going to help whoever is playing left tackle. It makes a world of difference. And if they do that, then that's going to make Kenny Pickett's job that much easier. Because a comfortable quarterback is a confident quarterback. And you need that to take that next step in the development. Now, those are my three guys. Now, you can agree with them, or you might have somebody different, but I wanted to see what you thought and what our viewers thought.
So for me, when it comes to just three players that probably hold the success of the season, in their play, so to speak, or have probably the more importance. I can't argue with the first two. TJ Watt, his health. I mean, when he's in the game, the Steelers win. When he's not, they don't. I mean, that's just plain and simple. And then, with Kenny Pickett, I mean, he's the guy that on the offensive side of the ball is going to touch the ball every play and is going to have a huge, be a decision factor as far as where the ball goes and the delivery of that ball. And so those two aspects obviously are probably the biggest, component to that, just for the sake of being, I guess, a little bit different. I do sort of agree with Seyomalu on the line aspect. I would think that for me, though, on that offensive line, I'm going to look at the left tackle position. I don't know, I'm looking at the position as just that. Not so much a player, but the left tackle position has to be a good one, whether it's Dan Moore or Broderick Jones or the combination of the two, whether it's starting off Dan Moore and then moving on to Broderick Jones later on. However, if Dan Moore's doing good, I don't know if you want to screw that up or screw up that chemistry at that point. But I think that the left tackle position is going to be highly important. When you look at what the Steelers did last season, when it came to their offensive tackles, PFF had came out and they had indicated that the Steelers protected their tackles more than majority of the NFL teams that were out there. That had two different, effects on the team. One, it limited what you could do passing the ball because you were having to utilize an extra tackle or bring in a tight end to help out the tackle to protect. And or it also made you a little bit more predictable because when you had those sets that were coming in, the defense could possibly tell, hey, they're going to run the ball in this situation, or even if they do pass, the options of who they're going to throw the ball to are limited. And so I think that really knocked down the Pittsburgh Steelers quite a bit as far as what they were able to do offensively. They had to simplify the offense because you had a rookie quarterback and a lot of young players offensively. And then you also had to help out your tackles. It was really not the best answer. So if they can get some solid play out of their left tackle position where they can utilize, another passing route versus having to protect him, and they can also, keep Kenny upright, I think that bodes well completely for the team and will help out just not even just, passing the ball, but also running the ball. Another player, in my opinion, that's going to have a big year, and that's going to be Najee Harris. Last year, they were running the ball effectively at the second half of the season, but that first half of the season when he was, not available and or injured, going through injury, or he was not, and had the chemistry with his offensive line, that running game really suffered. It was anemic, and I mean, the entire offense was horrible. Once they started getting going and started moving in the right direction, that's when I think that this offense started to really move in the right trajectory. Now, what's important for me is when it comes to Najee, is going to be health. He's been very durable up to this point in his career. I don't know how many running backs have had, the ability to play every single game in their first 2 seasons completely, and how long and you can expect that to happen where, a person that's continually getting the ball in the manner that he does stays healthy. And so I think him being durable and him playing, at a high performance level, and also being able to take a little bit of a load off with Jaylen Warren coming in, I think that's going to do well for this team and for the success of this team. And on the defensive side, we talked about the inside linebacker position. I think Cole Holcomb is a guy that's going to really have to step up. He's a guy that the Steelers gave somewhat of a bag to. They signed him for 3 years. They expect him to be around for a while and at least be a contributor for the next few years. So we're going to have to see him come up and take a step forward, especially with a healthy defensive front. Larry Ogunjobi's healthier than he was last season. TJ Watt obviously is going to be healthier than he was last season. We can hope and assume that with Keanu Benton and Larry Ogunjobi and even Martavius Adams and DeMarvin Leal, that can kind of sort of take the load off of Cam Hayward and allow to, extend his high performance play throughout the entire season instead of having him play so much. So those are the guys that I think of, not to be too long-winded. I hope it all makes sense.
No, you said something that very, it was very informative, and it's also something that we need to keep in mind. The offense was very predictable.
Right.
And part of the reason why is they used Miles Boykin and they used Gunnar Olszewski as that third or the slot guy to block on a lot of these plays. Even though they was already given assistance, sometimes in the heavy package, when they bring in another lineman or they put a tight end out there on the left side to help out. And when they were in these packages, they never threw the ball to Boykin and Olszewski. Olszewski did a few jet sweeps, but they did not throw to them guys. So that was basically like playing 10 on 11. Those guys, if it was a pass play, they didn't even have to worry about covering them. And it was that ridiculous. This year, you've got Darnell Washington. You've got CA3. You've got Connor Hayward. You've got they're wanting to get Harris and Warren on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
This year, that strategy, the defensive strategy the teams used against the Steelers last year, should be highly exploitable. And I think we're going to see a more dangerous, more creative offense, and an offense that's more aggressive, looking to take advantage of those plays. I mean, Boykin was talking this week, and he was like, I'm a receiver first and foremost. He's having to remind people, I'm not just a big guy, a blocker comes in on running downs. I'm not just the gunner on special teams. I'm a receiver. But people forget because they never threw him the ball last year. So right. I am expecting a lot of improvement there. And so much of that stems from that offensive line. And if the offensive line can hold up their end of the bargain, you have a quarterback confident to turn his back to the defense and set up play action, sell it. In the past, you couldn't sell a play action because you knew in 2 seconds you're getting ready to get run over. So I think that will improve this year. And like you said, that makes them offensive line, so like you said, left tackle, it makes it very crucial to any progress they make this year.
Yeah, 100%. If the Steelers are going to move forward and they're going to be able to be, more creative or want things to develop down the field, because that's been, I guess, the biggest complaint, right? That there's not enough development down the field. There's not enough creativity, things of that nature when it comes to this offense. Well, they're going to be able to have to handle, helmet on a helmet, man on man situations in the blocking. department and not have to utilize so many players just for the protection aspect to run a play that is, over in 2 point or out of the quarterback's hand in less than 3 seconds. And so,
Yeah.
those things have to move in that direction. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you before, we let everybody go and everything is, who are three players or three players that you think could surprise everybody for the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it's positive, negative, however you want to spin it. But are there three players that are on this team that could be a surprise?
Yes, I think. Well, there's at least three, but I immediately think about running back 3 position
Right.
because the Steelers have Anthony McFarland, a guy that we were all excited about because he brought a speed element, and he's just never been able to put it together. But last year, when Harris was hurt and Warren was still new, they used Benny Snell and they used McFarland. Like I remember specifically in the Colts game, and he had his best games as pro. Both of them did, because the offensive line had improved to the best they'd been since either guy had been there. So that matters. So now the offensive line should be even better this year. So maybe McFarland will be able to use that speed and not trip over grass or his own feet, which has been a problem. But they also have Alonzo Graham, who is from Morgan State, who's been brought in after rookie camp, and he looks like he has some burst. He's got special teams ability. He's got ability to catch the ball out of the backfield or to be split out. So he's going to give Anthony McFarland some run for his money. And then they got that, I think his name's Derek Hagans, another young free agent who says, I've got speed, and when we get to camp, I'm going to show it. Now, we haven't got to see him yet, but we'll get the first glimpse when camp rolls around. But these are three guys that can really surprise people, and that, especially if the Steelers are going to use, I'd like to see a 60-40 split between Harris and Warren.
Right.
Kind of like the Cowboys used Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard last year. It kept both guys fresh, but they are a contrast there in their styles. And if you're going to want to go run heavy, you want to have two guys and not wear anybody down. Harris's rookie year, he had almost 400 touches. I think it was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So, now you want to make sure he stays fresh and can come in there and pound the other team, especially if they have a lead late. Right. So I think that they might only keep 3 running backs, but whoever that running back 3 is going to be more important than people realize. Another pleasant surprise, I think, is going to be Connor Hayward, because Connor Hayward is going to be the H-back. He's going to be a blocking fullback at times. He's going to be that third tight end in some of them packages because they can move him all over. He can do jet sweeps. He can work the seam, as we've seen him do last year. Now, with a more versatile offense and an improved offensive line, he should have even more options. So I expect a big step forward from him, and he's a good special teams player. So he's able to replace Derek Watt on all levels, because it isn't like he's not a good special teams player, because he is.
Right.
The other surprise that it may be a pleasant surprise, the potential is there, would be for a guy like a Tanner Muse to be that coverage linebacker to a point that the Steelers fans, we were all kind of concerned about. Because coming out as a hybrid player from Clemson, that's what he did in college. Now, he's been a terrible fit when he went to the Raiders and then the Seahawks. He did not fit their schemes. I think he's a much better fit for the Steelers. And I could see him being that guy to come in with 4.41 speed and to use it certain coverages as a coverage linebacker, because I think Holcomb's going to stay out there a good bit.
Oh, yeah.
He's got decent speed, quickness, lateral movement, but Muse is even faster. So that would be great if that works out. I believe he'll be a good special teamer regardless, but it would really help if he could give them some of that coverage that they've lacked for the last few years.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and for me, like when it came to my three players, I had Connor Hayward also on my list, just because of the fact that, like you mentioned, he's going to be like a Swiss Army knife type of player on the offense. He's going to be utilized in a lot of different places, and I think he's going to be a mismatch nightmare. And with what he's utilized at and where he's utilized, he's not your traditional, tall tight end. But he's got the ability to catch and has some sweet hands. He's very quick and he has some moves with the ball in his hand, run after the catch type of situations. Being a former running back, he's got that vision. And so I think he's going to be a huge surprise for a lot of players or a lot of people. Maybe not for Steeler fans. I think we're all, seeing the writing on the wall when it comes to, the mismatches that he's going to be able to create. Another guy that I think is going to be a surprise, and again, this is probably more of a surprise to the rest of the NFL, not so much Steeler fans, but I think it's going to be Calvin Austin. There's been a lot of talk about his speed, a lot of talk about how they're going to utilize him inside and outside. I think he's going to be in the slot. I think he's also going to move to the outside. He burned Patrick Peterson down the sideline on a one-on-one, which, Pat Peterson is, he's up there in age already. His speed is probably not what it used to be. But he still is nobody to be taken lightly, so to speak. Nope. And so I'm excited about what he can do also as a punt returner, kick returner. I know that facet of the game is slowly being phased out, but with his speed and he claims that he has some pretty great ball vision, and it kind of showed up where in his college tape. We just haven't seen it in the pros due to the injuries. Yeah. And so if those things translate, I think he's going to be a huge surprise for the Steelers. And I think that there's a guy on defense that's going to be a surprise that, not many people are talking about, and people are kind of counting him out, and that's going to be Levi Wallace. I think he's a battle-tested guy. He was a walk-on in Alabama. He was an undrafted player, and he has made himself a name, and he has made himself a commodity out there as a cornerback. I feel that when you're that battle tested and you're that, have that much of a chip on your shoulder going into any aspect, and he's been able to prove that he is starter capable, I think he's going to do a fairly good job. Is he the future? No, he's not going to be the future, but I think he's going to be able to hold it down until the future is ready. And up until that point, I think this is going to be a good situation with iron sharpening iron. It's going to be a situation where he's going to elevate the young players beneath them, so that way when they do overtake his position or whatnot, it's a step up and not so much out of necessity or flip of a coin.
I get the impression with Levi Wallace that not only he's a great fit for the Steelers culture, and I think he's going to be another really good mentor for these young guys. And I think that he is the kind of guy that even if he isn't a starter anymore, that I believe he's going to be quality depth. And I think he would, his price would be in that right range to have his quality depth down the line. So I could see him being around Pittsburgh for a while, because the one thing that guy, everybody counts him out. They counted him out as a walk-on in Alabama. Yeah. Won national championships. They said he'll never make it as a free agent in the pros. Now he's a starter. So as you said, he just knows how to play. He's football savvy, and he's a hard worker. And those guys have a habit of staying around. We had Aquatic Life was agreeing with us and brought up somebody else that I wanted to mention, and Allen Robertson. This week, Allen Robertson is talking about the great connection that he has with Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett, he mentioned it as well. And we know that a young quarterback loves that savvy veteran. He loves that security blanket guy. I've said last year, I think Pat Freiermuth was becoming that for Kenny Pickett. But now he's got another one. And, I was thinking, so many catches, 500 yards, maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns, I'd be happy. But now Robertson might bump that up a little bit, maybe 600 or 700. Because I do think that, and he's talking about here these next 5 weeks, he's wanting to go to Jersey and get in some extra time with Pickett. And Pickett's getting married next week, I think it is.
Right.
Yeah, so Pickett's going to be a little bit busy. Let him get his wedding, let him get his honeymoon, wherever they're going. And then you can hit him up and maybe do some workouts. But Pickett's going to be a little busy for a little while. But I love that enthusiasm from Robertson. So, it seems like they're building a connection. And I don't really see Pickett having that with any of the other receivers. So don't be shocked if Kenny Roberts and Allen Robertson don't surprise us.
That would be amazing. I think he has a capability of being a very Jericho Cotchery type of receiver, in my opinion. What he was for like Ben Roethlisberger as that dependable guy, that security blanket. The guy that you go to when you need 7 yards and he'll give you 8. Things of that nature. It's not going to be a breakaway slam dunk, home run every time or majority of the time, but he's going to get you those gritty yards and be that guy for you. And I'm excited about it.
As you said, and you was exactly right. If you hit Deontay Johnson with a 5-yard pass and you need 6 yards, he don't drive for that last yard usually.
No.
It just doesn't happen. If you've seen Allen Robertson, the dude is really a solid, strong 6'2", receiver who definitely puts his head down and drives for them final inches when they are needed. So, I'm like you, man, as a young quarterback, I'm like, hey, we need that. I'm counting on that guy to go get it. And like I said, maybe it'll help Deontay Johnson to have less targets, but be used correctly to where he can run in space and get him the ball in space. So, again, I see possibilities where the whole offense, everybody can improve, even if some people get a little less targets.
100%. And I think that this receiving crew, they got everything. You got a route runner specialist in Deontay Johnson. You got a burner in Calvin Austin. You have a contested catcher and George Pickens, and you have Robinson, who's just an all-around good receiver who's going to be dependable and be your guy when you need him. And so, I strongly think that this team has really put themselves in position to be and to have a successful year, to kind of just make it full circle. For the Pittsburgh Steelers to have a successful year, I think they've put themselves in position to do so. And it doesn't hurt that the schedule isn't that daunting as it was last season. It's a little bit less strength-wise. It's not as strong. And so, and then those things, at this point don't mean anything, right? Teams can turn around as the season starts or whatever. But right now, I think things are looking promising and things are looking in the right direction.
Daniel, we got some breaking news, brother.
What is the breaking news?
Look at this.
What?
Now, if this is true, this is the ultimate commitment from a Pickett and his wide receiver. And I guarantee you that Pickett's fiance is not happy. but just saying, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, what dedication. And those are true Pittsburgh Steelers right there.
I'll tell you what, if Robinson ends up catching the first touchdown pass of the year, there has to be a wedding garter celebration or something like that. Exactly. and that touchdown, that'd be great.
I bet he catches the bouquet at the wedding.
He's catching everything, man. He's not going to let anything fall. He's going to be that security blanket. Well, I appreciate you, Shannon. It was a great show. Do you have any final words before we let everybody go?
No, it was just, I was looking forward to it all day. And we've had a great show and a great connection and everybody participating. I love that and I appreciate it. And it's good to have you back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. Thank you guys that have watched. Hit that like button on your way out. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Shannon, take us out. There it is.